So over the past couple of days, I have been thinking about Denji and his love life, which for me is quite an interesting conversation, but a weird thought process. When you think of Chainsaw Man, when you think of love, when you think of the abnormality that is Denji as an individual within that story, love doesn't necessarily fit. It feels like something that is very far from what he understands. And the more I actually thought about it, the more it makes a lot more sense why he can't fall in love, why it's very difficult for such a very normal concept for humans and for people to gradually fall in love with people, whereas for him it is more of a function. It is something that he has to switch on manually because he's never had the chance to learn about it himself. To me, this all stems from his childhood, and it's quite a legitimate problem that happens with very severe and traumatic experiences at young ages. The difficulty to love, and this doesn't just equate to love, but for his whole character, it's a great representation for it. I've done a full video already talking about Denji's childhood and the reason why he is the way he is today, why he's so simplistic and rather silly and not all too much intelligent and doesn't really understand social cues or how to interact with people, and why he values very specific small things that other people wouldn't. There's a lot of very understandable things that all link and correlate back to his childhood, the abuse that he went through, the trauma that he experienced, and how he was left alone. He was forced into a situation and he's been kind of stunted. His growth, specifically mentally, emotionally, spiritually, is all come to a halt because of everything that he's experienced, but the world he was thrown into after. He was forced to grow up and survive and be on his own in a very adult world as a young child. This completely warps your perception of the world, and you get a character that is Denji. But when you talk about love, when you talk about romance, relationships, an emotional connection or feeling to another individual, it falls directly under that same umbrella, that same problematic past that he has gone through. The biggest difference, however, is how much Denji is played upon with trying to connect with individuals. His quote-unquote horniness is something that is played rather heavily throughout Chainsaw Man's narrative, and this is kind of the direct reason for it, is because his want or need for physical attraction or touch is what he values, because he does not know anything else. But I would even theoretically argue the way he views or acts towards physical appreciation or physical touch is something that he cherishes more deeply. It's pretty much his bond, his way of love, his way of understanding another person. It's his emotional vulnerability coming across, if that makes sense. The only time you ever see him really get comfortable and hug another individual is Pochita, and that's very early within the story, but this is the way he shows companionship. This is the way he shows his love and appreciation to someone that he truly cares about. Sadly enough, this is all he knew. So when you go through Chainsaw Man, when you start coming across these very sexualized characters that want to sleep with him or offer him very specific things or manipulate him in every type of way, he doesn't understand nor see past the facade or the vicious intent behind it. All he sees is something that he's ever known, and that physical touch or physical embrace is something to cherish, is something to do with people that you love. And that is all he has ever known. So Makima, quite literally the first time they ever meet, embraces him. She hugs him, which kind of hooks him like a very docile fish that doesn't know what's going on and has baited up this line perfectly to continuously reel him in under this manipulation. See, words or mental or emotional warping between intelligence is something that's not going to work all too well on Denji. What Makima had to do is get under his skin, is to connect to him where he knows best. Because the only way she would be able to puppeteer his emotions, his thoughts, his mental state, is to give him things that he cares about, is to come down to his level of understanding and to build him up over time. Makima is a very intelligent person, yet the way she treats Denji, as we all know, is very simplistic, very straightforward, almost even blunt, but she offers the compensation of physical touch. It's something that Denji continuously reiterates over and over, but you notice as soon as other people start to fill in that void, or at least he starts to come across people that are more open or lenient to that physical touch, Makima changes her direction. She goes very quickly from using her body, using her attractiveness and hyping up Denji's wants, to giving him specific things constantly, to putting him in situations and offering him alone time with Makima, to thus fully capitalizing on the idea that Denji can have whatever he wants when he does this one specific thing for Makima. The reason this holds so much value, and it comes into contact with every single character that he fancies or that he's somewhat close to, is that it never gives him a chance to properly love. Which in the grand scheme of things is actually rather funny, because it's right up Fujimoto's style on how he likes to approach characters as contradictions. He puts them in very opposing places, thoughts and emotions that conflict constantly. So while Denji never has the opportunity to learn to love on his own, Makima forces it upon him, putting him in a pseudo family that he does actually get comfortable with, but this is actually different. This is the biggest reason, or like the turning point that changes Denji's perspective, a family role, which is something he's never had. The best way to kind of view Denji's appreciation for physical touch and his quote-unquote horniness, and how to split the two down the middle, is that because of how simple-minded Denji is, you would think that any woman that he comes in contact with is one that he would be happy to sleep with, right? And that is very much the case until Power comes into the picture. And Power becomes a character that he doesn't have a physical attraction for, that he doesn't want to do anything with, even though he does try it. He self-recognizes that it's wrong, that he sees Power as more of a sister, as a family, as someone that is so inherently close to him on a physical, emotional, and mental level that the sexual attraction, the horniness side, doesn't come across. It does nothing for him. This is him growing. This is him understanding and valuing people in a very normal and natural way, something that he's never, once again, had the opportunity to experience. So Power is an anomaly and a big stepping stone for Denji's journey. You have Himeno, you have Reze, you have Makima, these very intelligent women that pull him in all different directions. And every time he gets into this situation, every time he gets closer to this physical attraction that he wants, this physical need that he wants, it is offset by an entirely different emotion. Makima manipulating him and bringing him down to his lowest point. Reze being a completely different individual than he ever would have thought, and them fighting for life and death. Himeno obviously not sharing the same feelings and more so using Denji to satisfy herself. Do you see how every time Denji gets closer to what he considers a want of his, this sexual physical attraction that he has, as bluntly as he states it, he's still really far away. And the love that he's actually looking for is something that's going to take time to truly understand, which is where Chainsaw Man Part 2 comes into the picture. See, originally I thought of this video just solely focused around Chainsaw Man Part 2. The relationship between Denji and Nahyuta, Denji going to high school and being around people his own age, learning about these new things that he's never experienced before in a setting that is very normal. He's grown a lot since the beginning, and you see it right at the end of the story with how he appreciates Nahyuta, how he loves her as a sibling, someone that he wants to care for, almost like a big brother role, but also a fatherly role, which is ironic because he knows none of that. He doesn't have that experience. You can even jump that back to Power and the big brotherly role that he played with her. He never had that experience. So with the upcoming Chainsaw Man Part 2 and the potential to focus on Denji's love life and him coming to understand it, understanding himself, the people around him, his viewpoint on the situation will change. His viewpoint on the emotion and even the sexual or physical attraction that he has will change. I wouldn't be surprised if it already has. What's going to nourish this seed and allow it to bloom and flourish into something absolutely beautiful is none other than the relationship between Nahyuta and Denji. This will be a situation, a growth, a understanding understanding of one another that neither of them have experienced before. And while Denji is quite literally thrown within the deep end, you can see that he is learning. You can see that he is trying his hardest to understand people, and all of it comes at the help of Pochita, a devil, someone that isn't human, which leads me back to the contradictions. Once again, contradictions is very prominent in Fujimoto's works. He likes to play both sides, so you never truly know where he's going with it, which is the exact same reason why Denji can't necessarily fall in love the way we think he can. You want it to happen, and you'd love to see it at the end of the story, or at least for him to find that sort of happiness, which I do think he will and he has done before, but each time that he's come in contact with it or anywhere close to it, it's moved, or it's changed, or he's grown. The Chainsaw Man Devil is feared. It's also admired, but the power comes from it being feared. Denji falling in love could quite easily be his biggest weakness. It may not influence the Chainsaw Man ability, unless we take into consideration the overwhelming public perception that praises the Chainsaw Devil for saving them, which could evidently actually make him weaker. But love could be his weakness, something that he doesn't understand, something that he can never truly have, and it's rather saddening when you think about it. I have hope though. As much as Fujimoto loves to play so many different contradictions with Denji's character, him not being able to love gives him the opportunity to potentially find it, for it to grow, for it to bloom inside of himself, for him to understand it and to grasp onto the concept of it. It will take time, but the seeds have already been planted. They've been planted since chapter 1, with Makima embracing him, with the overall focus on his appreciation to physical contact and how much he seeks it. How something he seeked so desperately, he turned away from with power. Quite easily the only person that has offered it to him wholeheartedly, someone that he knows the best, someone that he loves. He declined it because he's learning the differences between them, because he sees power as family, as a sister. As much as Makima has warped the perception over time, by the end of the story, especially with Naoyuta, how a lot of things will most likely be played upon in Chainsaw Man Part 2, Denji's going to change a lot, and his understanding of love may lead him down a path where one day he could potentially find it. At what cost, however, I'm not entirely sure. So with that being said, that is basically it. Let me know how you feel about Denji and the possibility of him not being able to love. It's a concept that stems from his childhood and the abuse that he has gone through, so it's a very difficult thing, but one that can definitely be healed over time. There's a lot of problematic things within it, especially his experience with Makima, but there is a chance, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. But I want to thank you all for watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Drink plenty of water. New video every 3 days, and I will see you within the next one. Goodbye.